Everybody, and good evening. Welcome. This is the GameUp Africa Meetup, the first one of the year since last year. We're pretty excited to see you back and to also be back. This is a space where we come together and bring the key players in the game development ecosystem to learn, share, connect, and grow together. My name is Dorothy Orina. I am the programs manager here at Malio Games, running our Game of Africa Accelerator program, and I will be co-hosting the session together with my colleague Abby, who can also, Abby, you can go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hi, my name is Ebima Barrett Donasisa. I am the narrative designer for Malio Games. Hello, everyone. Hi, welcome.
Okay, today we're going to be tackling a very interesting conversation on the use of AI in games. This has been sitting with us for a very long time. We've seen the benefits, we've also seen the concerns that this is bringing up, and we want to do a deep dive into it. What are the opportunities that exist with AI? How are the developers in the continent utilizing this tool? What are the concerns that they have? What is the risk of using AI? So we're going to be delving into all of that. And we have an interesting lineup of speakers with us. I think, Abby, there's a bit of background noise on your end. Perhaps you can mute.
No program. Yeah, yes, yes. So the one, yeah, yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Times have changed drastically and in a very short time. In a world where people who have never sketched a thing in their life are able to produce art assets, and someone whose literature writing compositions will probably make you drool just a short while ago is now publishing interesting blogs on a regular, or in a space where game development is no longer elite and exclusive anymore, and people who have never written a single code in their lives are able to now produce game prototypes. We have to pause, put our hands on our waists, and drop our jaws and ask all those questions. I mean, it's incredibly impressive. Pretty good products that we're seeing out here, and it's also terribly concerning. So today we are bringing in creatives across the continent, producers, game developers, artists, and we want to understand how they are utilizing this power and what it might cost us if we don't use it intelligently.
All right. I will be doing a quick intro of our incredibly diverse panel of speakers. And the first, we have Wesley Canaria. I hope I'm not butchering your name. Apologies if I am. He is a game producer from Usiku Games. He's also an esports consultant, a community strategist focused on growing the African gaming ecosystem. He has led major initiatives across Usiku Games and Jiwe Studios and is part of the IGDA Next Gen Leaders Cohort 2025. He is a champion for mentorship, innovation, and inclusion into games. Hi, Wesley. Hello. All right. Welcome. We are so glad to have you here. Moving on to Yuri. Yuri Tadios Zam. Again, I apologize if I am butchering your names. I am doing my best. Zambarachki is a product manager for Game Tribe. Yuri helps game studios scale asset creation through structured content systems and AI-enabled production pipelines. He has a background in product strategy and growth. He designs workflows that improve speed, consistency, and creative quality across in-game and marketing content. Hello, Yuri. Hi, welcome.
To be here.
Okay. All right. Moving on to our third speaker, Christopher Adomako Jr. He's a game developer at Malio Games and a fellow colleague. Hello, Christopher. Christopher is a Ghanaian gameplay programmer and game designer, currently leading the Safari City project at Malio Games. He is also a graduate of GameUp Africa, and he focuses on building engaging and accessible games that highlights the African talent and storytelling. Hi, Chris. Welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, moving on to our fourth speaker, David Olamide. He is a game developer and the co-founder of Dimension 11 Studios. David is a Nigerian game developer with over 7 years of experience in the industry and a background in computer engineering. He is committed to expanding cultural representation in games and supporting emerging developers across Africa. Hello, David. It's a pleasure to meet you again. Welcome. Okay. Moving on to the next speaker, Kennedy Kialo. He's a 3D artist for contact content. Kennedy is an award-winning animator, a 3D art generalist based in Nairobi, Kenya, and he's also the co-founder of Contact Content and Rebel Studios. His work spans across music videos, educational films, and games, with his film Dead Valley winning Best Animation Production at the 2024 Kalasha International Awards. Hello, Kennedy. Welcome.
Hi
Okay, I
everyone.
think. Okay, hello. Hello. Welcome. Okay, moving on to our next speaker, who is Papi Quado. Quadwo. He's the creative director at Letty Arts. Quado is a 2D, 3D artist and creative lead with over a decade of experience in illustration and game art. As art lead at Letty Arts, he creates culturally grounded visual experiences for games and interactive media. Hello, Quadwo. Welcome in. Hello. Okay. Moving on to our next speaker. Moses Kamau, he's a game developer and founder Matching Into the Sun. Moses is lead game developer working across VR and AR and games for impact. He is currently exploring how generative AI can help developers iterate, prototype, and playtest faster while maintaining creative control. Welcome, Moses. Hello. Okay. Over to you, Dorothy.
Okay, thanks, Abby. And before we get into our deep dive today, we're going to do a quick rapid fire with our panelists. So the rule of this is very simple. Say no or yes, right? We're going to go back to the controversial questions later and tackle them in detail. But at this point in time, I want you to give me a no or yes in 2 seconds, right? So 1, 2, no, yes. And it's going to set a precedent to our conversation today and the use of AI in games. And I'm going to start with you, Wesley. Is it easy for you to make a game today without using AI in any way? Think ideation, dialogue, asset generation, just conventional, traditional game development.
No.
All right. Um, let's go to David Olamide. Do you think AI will make African studios compete globally?
Yes.
Okay. Yuri, do you fear AI could make games feel generic?
Yes.
All right. Let's go to our artists, Quadwor. Have you already used AI in a way your players would not notice?
So the question again.
Have you already used AI in your game in a way that players would not notice?
No.
Okay. Um, let's go to Kennedy. I can't see your video, but I hope you hear this. Will you shape a game where more than 50% of your assets were AI generated?
Kindly repeat the question.
Would you ship a game where 50% of your assets were AI generated?
No.
Okay. Chris, if AI tools disappeared tomorrow or the infrastructure just didn't work for some reason, would your studio slow down significantly?
No.
Okay, interesting. All right. Thank you for participating in this. I think now we can get down into our questions for today.
All right. The first question I have is to David. Hello, David. Hi. Hello.
Yeah,
How are
hello.
you?
Yeah, I'm good.
Hi. Okay, so I'm just curious. So AI in games, of course, is not an entirely new concept. It's been around for maybe a few years now. But the perception and capabilities, of course, have increased dramatically over the years since AI was first introduced. And now we have intelligent agents, AI generated art. How would you summarize the evolution of AI and what do you think is fundamentally different about AI today? Whether it's a positive difference or a negative difference, that's up to you.
Yeah, so I mean AI has evolved over the years, right? And I remember before we had generative AI, we had something that we called um what was the name again? There was something that we had whereby it was text based, right? A lot of people would chat with AI bots, and there's something called rejects, right? Regular expressions, where you can chat with a lot of chatbots and have conversations. It was mostly used in e-commerce, where people could buy things from stores without necessarily having like a human assistant, being there. But coming to the games industry, AI adoption hasn't really been there for a very long time. I think the games industry adoption of AI came in the past 6 years, right? But when it comes to machine learning, which is different, but I mean it works together with AI. Machine learning has been around for a little bit longer in the games industry. An example of that is in things like motion matching that a lot of studios use. But when it comes to AI as we see it today, it's actually very recent in games, especially when you look at the art side of things, right? And that's why we are seeing a lot of kickback against AI, right? By artists, right? When it comes to things like originality, the legalities around how people use AI, and how AI, gets its data, right? People call it stealing from other artists and all of that. So, but think about the evolution of AI. We can look at it from two angles: from development, like coding, administrative task management, and then we can look at it from the artistic side. So, if we look at it from the aspect of coding and also administrative task management, it has been around for a lot longer, right, in the games industry. But when it comes to for at least 3 years at the artist, because using AI, generative AI, I started using more in the past like 1 2 years. So the evolution is not really universal, right? In games, some part of the game development processes we used it earlier than the other. For instance, people who were doing administrative work, right, writing emails, pitch decks, and all that kind of stuff. We actually using AI before we started using AI in development, right? Think of people using Grammarly, right, and all of these text editing tools in softwares that are not game development softwares, that are administrative softwares used, by any company. They typically would use AI, but they probably wouldn't know that they were using AI because a lot of things were, you know, happening behind the scene. They didn't see the whole AI tag thing, right? That we see today, that people are now coming out to say, well, this is clearly AI, right? So the journey has moved from using AI for just administrative tasks and more mundane, monotonous tasks to now using it in core development, and that's where we are today. Where across development for engineers, coding agents, coding assistants, now coming to artistic side of things with generative AI, even making 3D models, texture pipelines, and all of those things are having AI, in the process.
All right, thank you for that brilliant answer. Yeah, I think your point to the evolution of AI not being something that is like matched across board, that is quite even across board, is something to consider, especially as we're moving into using or trying to use AI products in game development. Dorothy, over to you.
Okay, I'm actually curious about the very specific ways that each of us is using AI in their workflow. I like that David mentioned the different ways that it can be used, right? We're all working in different studios across the continent, and I would like to capture at least three perspectives of how it's being used in these studios. Also, to get a perspective of a developer, an artist, producer, and how those particular roles can utilize AI. Maybe we start from a development perspective, right? And Chris, you can speak to this, right? So, as a developer and as developers in your team, how are you specifically utilizing AI in your workflow?
Dorothy, you're breaking up a bit. You said as a developer. Can you take the question again?
Sorry, yeah. As a developer and within your team, how are you utilizing AI in your work?
Okay, so just to make sure I have the question. So as a developer and my team, how are we utilizing AI in our workflow?
Yes.
Okay. I think David has already shed some light, right? And I think he nailed a lot of it on the head. And I think first off, it's if I want to go back a bit, right, in terms of its adoption. Of course, at the beginning or at when we've had some serious discussions internally about how we can, utilize AI, right? This whole concept of utilizing AI. So you definitely expected this kind of skepticism when it comes to that completely taking it on board, right? So yeah, of course, it was expected. A lot of developers would definitely be skeptical when it comes to kind of like changing your entire workflow, and the bottom line was we definitely need to scale. I think that is the first thing. We need to scale, and whether we like it or not, in this part of our world, we don't have endless resources as compared to the people we're trying to compete with in other parts of the world, right? So we had to be smart about it. So imagine we internally we do have this kind of rapid prototyping model, right? The idea here is how quickly can you get, an idea from its ideation stage into a playable prototype, right? And speaking of timelines, right? This could probably take months, right? Or a month, 2 months just to get maybe a working prototype out there, right? And when it comes to AI, um, we are looking at it from the angle of how do we reduce production time, right? How can we cut down this production time? How fast can we get these prototypes from ideation, right? So it's more about we don't see it as basically replacing developers or replacing any kind of creativity, right? We view it as kind of like a force multiplier, right? We know what we are capable of. How can we 2x our output, right? So let me give a practical example, right? So, you are debugging, right? You know, we have agents nowadays, right, that are integrated into your projects. There are some tools. If you want to go into more details in Unity, there are some tools that are directly integrated into Unity that allow you to kind of like or act as kind of like an agent, right, within Unity. So these kind of tools, for example, you need to fix something, right? Imagine, let's say, the typical workflow of a developer without AI. You encounter a problem you're not familiar with, you hop off onto forums, you hop off onto any kind of research you can find in order to debug or fix this problem, right? So now take it as if you now have these forums, these research avenues or areas that you could basically, or you used to follow, all integrated into one space, right? So this is more like in the same space you're trying to debug the problem. I mean, the AI is still available for you to try and, I mean, 2x the amount of time you take to debug, fix. I mean, and yeah, this in terms of like development programming, I think this is the core use case, right? This is basically the bone of what we try to achieve, right? I mean, we all know it's all about when you're in production, right? And um, the only thing we try to think about is that turnaround time. You've pushed something out, a bug has been reported. How long is it going to take you to fix it, right? This time is money, right? So the longer this bug stays in production, the longer or the more likely you are to lose your audience. I mean, somebody has reported a bug. The quicker you are to get back to the person to tell them, oh, the bug has been fixed. Go back and try again. Yeah, this is all we're talking about, right? If we don't keep our players, they're having bad experiences. How quickly can we rectify these problems when they come up, right? So yeah, I think that's a short summary of how we are applying it today. Yeah.
Okay, great. Thanks for sharing that. We can also get an artist perspective. So for this, Quadwo, how do you use AI in your art workflow?
Okay, thank you very much. So using AI in workflows, basically during conceptual level to give me much more consistent sketches by not making the AI more like the driver, but rather the co-pilot, my assistant. So usually, using the AI, the AI tools that I use in most of my work are for pre-productions at the concept level. Yeah, so from there, maybe at production, maybe you need some few things, but it shouldn't be the complete work. As some studios will rather just jump into AI stuff, generation stuff, and think is the complete work. You can use it as a tool. So for me, I see it like using Photoshop or Flash Studio to work, but for more of concept buildings.
All right, so conceptualization, consistency, and using it as a tool. All right, great.
Yeah,
Lastly,
basically
you can
what
also
helps.
Sorry,
sorry, you're
didn't quite
breaking.
catch that.
Yeah, Wesley, you can also answer this from a producer perspective. How does AI help you while producing games?
So from a producer project management perspective, one of the AI tools I recently learned to use was Notebook LM, which like compiles a bunch of, well, it helps you compile a bunch of research related to accessible questions and everything else, especially if you're doing research on specific concepts, be it games, be it concepts in games. I mean, I used this tool before coming to the live to learn and deepen my research on AI and game development. On top of that, one of the tools I use a lot is Gemini. Especially if you're looking to analyze quick spreadsheets, quick Google Sheets, and everything else. So rather than having manually look at a sheet, do the numbers yourself, you can ask Gemini a quick question, it can do the work for you. I'm a big fan of, well, fan is a long way to say, but I'm a big user of ChatGPT in case I want like a quick answer. The Google search algorithm doesn't necessarily give you the answers you're looking for, especially if you have a specific concept in mind or a specific project plan you're looking for in mind. So you can sort of grill ChatGPT to find out, okay, so there's this project plan that we have in mind, we want to utilize it and everything else. It also helps build project plans. Though I have to be very careful and say it doesn't make it doesn't necessarily from scratch make the plan for you. You have to have the plan in mind and everything else. And rather than just saying, okay, so here's a plan, put in ChatGPT to get us on a flow of how it will go, grill it on about some of the budgets, questions, timelines, if it work, and see what it pops out with. Personally, it's really increased my workflow. Excuse me, really increased my workflow and efficiency at work, even from my consultancy side of work. It also helps me in case there is a burning issue, especially whether it's the game dev industry, and I want to find out more about it. I I don't I'm being very careful here. I don't just go and say, okay, cool, what is the solution to this problem? I first look at a bunch of possible solutions, put it in either Notebook LM, ChatGPT, or even Gemini as well, and see what it thinks about the solutions presented. That way you have an AI that can sort of bounce off of the ideas you're thinking about. But essentially that's how I use AI in my work as a producer.
Okay, awesome. Thanks for sharing the producer perspective. Abby, over to you. Your audio is breaking.
Oh, you did a lot of work. Okay. Is it better now? Can everyone hear
Much
me?
clearer now. We can hear you. Yeah.
Okay, cool. I have a question for Chris. Right, you mentioned that a lot of the AI use is not your studio would function almost similarly without AI, and it's just something that you use to shorten how much time is spent on a specific task. So your junior developers can generate in like 10 minutes what used to take 3 days, which is, a game changer and a net positive. Uh, but it also changes like the approach of entering the job market, because now we're looking for a different set of skills than what we would have been typically looking for without like AI. So what skills do you think junior developers are developing, and what skills do you think that junior developers are no longer developing in the rise of AI?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. Um, there's always going to be this kind of like as you said, let's say big hole or gap that is going to be left, right? But then again, I it doesn't entirely mean it's negative, right? Because yes, of course, with the rise of AI, maybe a few years ago, the amount of time it would take you to, yeah, let me use a use case for example, right? Maybe you have a technical assignment, right? You're applying for a job, you have been given some kind of technical assignment, right? So maybe 2 3 years ago, it could have taken you 2 weeks to complete maybe a small technical assignment. But yeah, now with the rise of AI, I mean, you find um, junior developers applying for positions, doing like crazy stuff. Like I mean that in a positive way, within just a short period of time, right? So it's very difficult to, I mean, yes, I feel yes we can highlight a couple of things, right? Yeah, maybe in terms of you do benefit, right? Going through that struggle of trying to fix problems without AI. Yes, I'm not denying that fact, right? There's a huge benefit to that, right? But I also don't want I mean, not don't want per se. I also can't say that maybe eventually these gaps will definitely be filled by AI, right? So it's more around moving forward, or like looking forward, right, we are definitely entering an era where, like, yes, there are some all-rounded skills in quotes that you may miss out on, but I do feel you may be able to compensate with this stuff. I mean, depending on the tools coming in, right? So there is that debate about, okay, am I going to be a worse am I worse off as a developer or as a programmer using AI, or I'm better off, right? So it's still a big debate, right? But again, I still feel embracing the use of AI does not necessarily mean like we are throwing away all the skills we know, right? Because it does definitely require um, a certain sense of technical know-how, right, to be able to navigate your way through some tight spots, right? So you then find the kind of skills that maybe developers now would have to pick up is being resourceful, right? It's now about knowing the best tools out there, right? You need to look for the right tools to um, perform the right function, right? So being resourceful then becomes kind of like a big skill, right? You need to, I mean, let me go back to this technical assignment, right? You need to perform task SX, right? So you need to have, in quotes, kind of like a library, right? Of these tools that you use to kind of like perform specific functions. So I think the more resourceful you are, the I think the better you get, right? Because at the end of the day, it's we are all trying to prompt an AI to give out, like, I mean, some answers, right, or some line of code, or some generate some assets or something, right? So yeah, I think that's pretty much how I feel about it. And there may be some other skills you may develop, but I think resourcefulness is definitely at the top of the list. Yeah.
I see David raised his
Oh,
hand.
Oh yeah, so I was going to add to that. So I'm looking at this from a broader industry perspective, right? Um, I mean, this is something I say to my mentees, right? That AI would certainly clear out a lot of junior roles in the games industry. I mean, this is a sad reality that we've been seeing, that you hardly find junior positions by studios, right? These days, it's mostly senior, 5, 6, 7 years experience, because it's a known fact today that a senior developer with an AI is even better off than a senior developer with two junior developers, right? A senior developer with an AI is more efficient than a senior developer with two junior developers. So what that tells you is you have to look at, similar to what Christopher said, but looking at it more deeply, um, how resourceful one and how do you think? Now it comes to problem solving than actual coding. Now the coding aspect of it, AI can do it. Now, how do you think? Because in the end, AI is still at your beck and call, would only act on your instruction. So even these tools are available to you, how do you now use them? Now you have these tools, you know these tools. How do you now use them to actually solve problems? So problem solving skill sits at the very top. And that's why there are some rules in the games industry that would probably never go away, right? When it comes to the creativity rules, right? Rules that require some level of thinking that is not just task, oh, do this, right? What comes before assigning a task, right? What problem needs to be solved before execution happens? That phase is something that, while AI is getting better at doing it, you still need a human involvement there. And that's where seniority comes in, because a senior developer has a lot of experience to understand, you know, that phase better. So that's one. And then the other thing is the fact that there's AI now, right, means that we'll see a lot of layoffs happening. I mean, we've seen a lot, like, junior roles are getting cleared out, redundant roles, redundancies in studios are reducing. And what's that? Why some might see it as negative, what it creates is an open space in the industry for people to actually experiment. So someone who has been leader from a studio can pick up, you know, a new project, an ambitious project, and with the help of these AI tools, they can make their pipeline much streamlined, right? They can even spend less. Now the barrier of entry to games have reduced. The cost of game development because of AI has also reduced. Right, there's some information that you won't be able to get normally if you don't have some 5-6 years of experience in games industry. But with AI tools, you can cut down 6 years into 2-3 years. You with your 2 years of experience plus an AI knowing a lot can give you that 6 years of experience to some degree. So, it cuts down that barrier to entry and production costs for games, and then it will increase how much games we'll see, right? And sadly, both quality and sloppy games would see a lot of them, but we'll see more studios working on ambitious projects, right? Releasing stuff out there, and I think that's a net positive for the industry, where someone is lead of can go out there, gather 2-3 people, have access to AI tools, and build and make magic, and we're seeing that already happening in the industry.
Okay, thanks, Libby, for sharing that. And I like that you're bringing up this conversation on accelerating output versus keeping apprenticeship. And maybe Yuri can answer this, right? So if AI is reducing production cost by 40%, but it's reducing the need for junior roles, how does this reflect on the progress of the continent, right? In terms of mentorship and talent development?
Yeah, I think the way this question can kind of be answered is in different parts. The first part is existing jobs. So it's definitely not going to be a good thing when it comes to the existing industry, because we're already in sort of like, I wouldn't say a global economic downturn, but I'd say that the games industry specifically doesn't have a lot of new job openings at the entry level. So the job competition is pretty high, especially when more senior developers, especially developers laid off from big studios that are being closed. I don't want to mention specifics, but there are lots of studios that are being closed because of excess funding, from COVID era, just I would say excess investor expectations in the AAA industry. And when these studios close, they flood the market with top tier talent. A lot of this talent will sort of gravitate towards like double A, single A studios, but many of them will start their own indie studios. Many of them will apply to work with existing indie studios. And that's where they tend to push out sort of fresh faces, because if you have a small studio and a very small budget, you're going to ask yourself, okay, there's someone who's very experienced, willing to take a pay cut because it's a very tough job market. They're very passionate about games. Should I take someone very experienced, or should I get one or two interns? And then from a sort of studio or industry perspective, you have to say, okay, I'm going to go with whatever is most cost effective. When you bring AI into the equation, you might think, oh, this means that a junior can perform, above their, their weight class. They can do a lot more. But actually, what happens is that the mid-level and senior developers are actually so much more productive with AI that they end up thinking to themselves, okay, I could bring this person in to help me with one or two things, or I could probably just use AI and do it myself. And that ends up becoming the thought process of a lot of smaller studios, especially that are tight on a budget. They're thinking, you know what, this year, I'm going to try and see if I can implement AI into my workflow so that I don't have to bring in new people, so that I don't have to outsource too much. And I think that for the current job market is a big problem. Now, looking forward, it's a bit of a sort of a catch-22. If you know some game development, if you have professional coding experience or something in music production and art and 3D and animation, you are in a much better starting point. It's a lot easier to learn and grasp new concepts because you have AI to help you and walk you through the more difficult parts of things. But you kind of already need those skills in order to be of value to a studio. So those days when, studios would bring in interns, and we're talking about big studios too, not just indies, when big studios would bring in a whole batch of interns and train them from scratch with, their internal tools, internal processes, and they would get sort of this cutting edge experience that is really beneficial for the industry as a whole when they start hopping between studios later on. That era is sort of gone. So I would say that for those who are willing to push themselves and learn, you're going to be able to learn a lot faster and do a lot more, but you're going to lose those internship opportunities, and it's going to be a bigger struggle. And you sort of have to prepare yourself to enter sort of a mid-level role and meet mid-level requirements, even though you're someone that's still in a junior status, if that makes sense. So from a hiring perspective, I think we call it upward pressure on the job market. So you have that situation where there's more pressure on mid-level and senior roles because they're expected to do more with AI, and then the junior roles, they sort of evaporate in the short term, and I don't think that's good for the games industry as a whole. Like when a new generation of devs just misses out on these opportunities.
Yeah, you're definitely right,
All
and
right.
the stakes are higher.
We seem to have lost Kennedy again. So, Quadwo, my question to you is based off of everything Yuri just said. I mean, clearly, if internship roles begin to disappear, if lower level roles begin to disappear, there's not really any of those entryways into the gaming system. So we clearly know what pipelines will struggle the most if AI tools, you know, are becoming as they are a huge part of the industry. But let's take it to the other way. Hypothetically, if AI tools were to just vanish from the planet tomorrow, which part of your pipeline do you think would struggle the most?
Okay, so in terms of production, um, for animation, it will suffer a little because some of the in betweens, you need AI to help with it, and also programs like Unreal Engine. Um, there's this plugin, Clothing AI. Yeah, with that one, it does coding for characters quickly. So on that part, if AI isn't there, um, in terms of production, it will delay a bit, maybe a day or two. But since all these tools are available to us, we are able to do things instantly. Yeah. And when you also come to the my side as a more of character building, visualization. For me, AI has helped me a lot in terms of getting some concepts done, helping me with visualizations as in creating scenes and that kind of stuff, instant ideas. It helps a lot, but if it's not supposed to be there, if it's not there at the moment, like it wouldn't be much of a hassle, but it will delay a bit. Just that with AI, it really helps me to work very, very, very fast.
All right.
Still on that
Thank you.
conversation on AI. Oh, sorry, Abby.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
no,
still on that
I was
conversation
going
on
to.
AI visualization.
It's
All
fine.
right. All right, cool. Yeah, so as we speak on AI visualization, now that we have Kennedy here, Kennedy, most of African studios are making African inspired games, right? Which require that in this visualization, we are also trying to preserve that cultural identity. So for African studios that whose intent is to make African inspired games, and they are using AI to assist with this. How are creators like you ensuring that AI acts as a cultural magnifying glass that will highlight African nuances rather than blending to the general aesthetic?
Um, currently, it's a huge challenge because, as you know, most of the AI tools are trained with Western data. So it's been a huge challenge to get results that kind of look African. but I found that most of my friends who are animators and game developers using AI in very initial stages to sort of generate ideas, and then they are able to build on those ideas themselves, as opposed to getting something that's already good to go from AI. Using AI for the pipeline has been very useful for a lot of animators, especially here in Kenya locally, especially using tools like the MetaHuman, which are, we call it machine learning powered, but it's technically AI powered, has been very, very helpful for a lot of animators. Because the thing with AI is that I've come to realize that it has democratized the creation process, and that has helped a lot of people who might not have, the proper budget to do like an entire mock-up setup, right? They're able to use AI to sort of speed up their workflow. Also, tools like Move AI, which a lot of animators use to generate motion, has been super, super helpful, especially for studios that are one-man studios like myself and a lot of other friends that I know.
Thank you, Kennedy. Well, Wesley, you raised your hand earlier, so I guess while you're speaking, you could just quickly answer this question. Based off of everything we've discussed, obviously AI has helped us cut costs a bit, but African studios now operating on like tighter constraints in terms of like resources and talents and infrastructure, especially with AI at hand. Like, what opportunities are here for studios, for creators, for developers in Africa, and how does that affect how African studios use and rely on AI versus how, like, for instance, a studio in America or the global north would use and rely on AI? And also, you can chip in, while you raise your hand.
Okay. So one of the first things, actually, think to answer your question, I'll explain why I raised my hand. I think it's very important to set the precedence of understanding, which I like doing, what AI actually is. So AI isn't 2000 and what 2020 to 2006 thing. It existed way back in the 1990s. We're talking about final state machines. We're talking about things like pathfinding, all that stuff. So I might slightly disagree with Quadro when we say if we entirely remove AI, a lot will go, including multiplayer systems, including pathfinding systems, including the ability of NPCs to move, think locally, like a lot if we entirely do of AI. If we're restricting to generative AI, then maybe. But if you're talking about AI in its entirety, a lot of the game, excuse me, a lot of the games industry is fundamentally built on AI, right? As a tool in itself. Now, there's a bunch of opportunities for people. I mean, recently, here in Kenya, I can't discuss a lot of stuff, but our company has been able to have a lot of AI projects together. But one of the things that I do know has helped a lot is that with the presence of AI, people are able to educate themselves on a much faster rate. And you raised a very good point about right now, developers are not, the studios are not hiring junior developers. I might slightly disagree with that, not entirely though, but I might disagree with that from the perspective of at this day and age, it's easy for someone to learn to develop a game with the assistance of AI, right? And that's from the perspective of coming from. If you're looking at it from the much larger AAA industry kind of thing, where these teams are looking to cut costs and increase profitability, yes. But if you're looking at it from in an African industry where many people interested in coming to the game development industry and they have nowhere to start. Some of them don't have coding experience or even art experience, but what they have is a passion, a story, or something they want to tell. AI massively empowers them to work from that perspective. And the amount of content, just leave alone on specific courses, just on YouTube, that allow you to learn what to do with AI is really helpful. Earlier last year, I wanted to try my hand on Unreal. Disclaimer: I cannot code or draw or create animations to save my life at all. But I wanted to start, understanding what Unreal is, what it was doing, how to implement it. And my basis for this wasn't I wanted to go make a game, make Unreal, and I mean using Unreal to make a game or any assets or whatever. What I wanted to understand is if people are talking about assets in Unreal, if we're talking about this specific tools in Unreal, what do they mean? All I had to do was, work with ChatGPT and work with YouTube, and I got gist of it in a couple of months. But the reason why, for me, it's very important to, like I said earlier, differentiate between what we call generative AI, which is what is modernized, what people know about, versus AI in general, is because we tend to have this sort of um, uh, I'd call it a hate or disgust is the right word. We tend to have this sort of disgust when people hear the word AI thrown about, right? Recently, during the Clear Obscura, was given a lot of hate for using AI within some of their assets. But what people, and especially gamers, tend to forget is that AI isn't generative AI. AI is what helps you be able to interact with an NPC. AI helps you be able to connect with your friends when playing a multiplayer game. AI is what helps you have a wonderful experience when you're playing Baldur's Gate. I mean, Baldur's Gate is utilize a lot of AI in the development. Now, if you're looking at it from the perspective of not just generative AI, but AI as a whole, the opportunities of people to learn how to utilize specific AI, be it logic AI, be it agentic AI, be it generative AI, massively increases. So, to sum it all up, there are a bunch of opportunities starting from the lowest of low, which is just free courses online, free courses on YouTube to be able to empower you to learn these AI skills. Um, it is also important to note that generative AI is not the only way that you can utilize AI within your workflow. It is also in a stage of learning what specific AI you'll be utilizing, understanding even if you're like building something or creating something, where AI is applied we don't know. Because one thing I learned is even some of the games I play that we think don't utilize AI actually utilize a lot of AI. So I hope that answers your question, Abby. Let me know if it doesn't.
It does. It does. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
It's interesting, Wesley, that you mentioned that AI has existed, right? And it has for a very long time. And it was previously just known as NPCs and NPCs movement. And with generative AI, it's become a more commonplace term that people are now recognizing. And it has brought up the conversation of tagging things as AI when they are, especially online on social media, where people feel duped and they see things that they think are real but are actually AI generated. So when we're having this conversation about games, and I'll direct this question to Yuri, right? Should players know when AI is used in your game, whether through dialogue, audio, art? I mean, previously when we're using NPCs, we never used to make that public information, right? But now that we're using generative AI, do you think that transparency matters? And also, while answering that, what do you think will most likely trigger a player to dislike a game based off the AI that you use?
So I think disclosures are important, but they're also becoming less important as time goes on. What we're seeing is a lot of the platforms sort of dictate what you're supposed to disclose. Like if we look at Steam, so if you're making a game for like the sort of core gaming community, desktop or Xbox or PlayStation, you will most likely want to launch on Steam at some point, and you will need to give disclosures because that's what they require for that specific platform. I haven't seen that for other stores like GOG, like there's so many different stores, but usually you'll see the platforms or local legislation or even EU legislation be the one to dictate how much AI has been used in games. But I don't think it matters so much because the more we use AI, the more it just becomes sort of the normal go-to thing, and those disclosures become a little bit redundant. I think the reason platforms like Steam really emphasized honest disclosures, and even the Game Awards, which had disqualified Claire Obscura, the Expedition 33 game, because they had undisclosed use of AI, and they basically lost their Game of the Year status. That is because of how people feel about AI. We're not talking about you know the game industry professionals. We're talking about just people in general. We're talking about people who play games. They don't feel good about the idea of jobs being lost because of AI automation, because of people trying to cut costs, executives specifically trying to cut costs. And then people feel like there's something being lost, that AI is becoming generic. And I think that when it comes to juniors and people who are new to the games industry, they'll have such a heavy reliance on AI that it leads to a situation where we basically see a lot of reproductions. Like, people have carbon copies of the same game because the defaults that come out from AI are consistently the same. And they are trained on Western data. They often are trying to answer a question rather than generally help you brainstorm or explore your creative process, right? So I think that this is something that we can't really solve in the short term. The actual solution is to use AI when we have to use it, and then get as creative as possible and involve our own sort of, I want to say intellect, I want to say our own creative juices in every step of the process. If you rely too much on agents, because agents are, well, they're agentic in the sense that they're meant to take step-by-step actions automatically. If you rely on them, then they end up putting you in the back seat. Instead of being the driver, you're being driven around and being told what to do. And I think that's very problematic for the creative process. But like Wesley mentioned, for the non-creative processes, when we're talking about, like how certain systems and processes work in your game, things like pathfinding, things like procedural generation, these are things that AI can be a tremendous help for. And I think that we've already talked about motion capture. We've talked about things like MetaHuman, which are not exactly generative AI, but borrow some of those concepts to help, with 3D modeling and animating those 3D models. So there's always been this expectation that you'll use some form of AI in development of games, and that you will use generative AI at some point. But now there's sort of a push and pull between what gamers love about original creative work and what studios love about being able to be efficient and be able to create bigger and better projects, right? So I think that's where we're currently at. We're at a cultural divide, not really an industry divide. I think all the industry pros here can agree that generative AI is great for the production process. They would probably say, hey, juniors shouldn't rely on it too much. You should try to learn as much as you can. Try to hand code, hand paint, hand draw, make your own music, make your own sound effects, do your own editing. Start with that, build the fundamental skill set, and then grow from there. I think that's what industry professionals generally say. I could be wrong, but I think the idea here is, let's use AI, but let's not replace our own creativity with AI. Let's be the driver in this situation.
Thank you, Yuri. And I think my final question would be to Kennedy. Speaking to what Yuri said about, like, in terms of advancement, what we're seeing in terms of how AI is being used, the worry that AI is going to replace human ingenuity and human creativity. I am curious as to what you think, given the pace of advancement that we're seeing now, what you foresee AI making possible by, say, 2036. What leaps in the industry? How do you think AI could set us back, if at all, in 2036?
I don't think we'll even reach 2036 before we see uh, insane growth and insane, because when you look at a tool like the MetaHuman Animator, previously the only way to do facial capture was using an iPhone, which is quite expensive, right? But today, with any regular device that can capture video, and with even just audio, you can get usable facial animation today. I foresee a scenario where in the next maybe 5 years, we will see a lot of developers and animators incorporating AI tools in their pipelines. As far as the video generation and the image generation, I think that's gonna hit a ceiling at some point. I was reading another post sometimes back, and it claimed that a huge percentage, more than 50% of all the content on the internet today is AI generated, and it has all those weird AI generated video problems. So if AI continues to learn from that, yeah, it's going to get sticky. But for those other super useful tools, I think they will continue growing. Next year we might get an update for the MetaHuman animator. I don't know how that would look like. um, Move AI is coming. It's been here for some time, and it's been helping a lot of single developer studios generate very good looking animation using AI. So I foresee a scenario where a lot of developers, especially in Africa, where most studios are just a one-man band, I foresee a scenario where we will be able to produce very high quality work with the help of AI. Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much, Kennedy, for sharing that. And you said that 2036 is going to be too far before we start seeing the insane developments. And I think that's true. I mean, so much has happened in the last 2 years that you will probably not think to be possible. But here we are. So the future is looking very interesting and exciting. So as we close the panel, my last question will be to Chris, right? So still in the same vein, I was following a conversation somewhere on how initially when like how currently we are so used to taking conventional food that organic food has become something very exclusive, right? So in the case of AI in games, or just individually, right? So 10 years to come, do you think that individuals that don't use AI will become irrelevant, or will that also become a premium that you have to pay extra to access somebody who is not using AI?
That's an interesting question, and yeah, I think it's simple. I mean, I do not think maybe yes use 10 years, that it will definitely get to a point whereby maybe somebody who is not using AI, right, would um I mean, I think that's a bit too drastic for now, right? But certainly, how I would look at it is it's going to be very difficult, right? To, I mean, I feel we're going to get to a point, it's going to be very difficult to not use it, right? I mean, wherever you find yourself. I mean, if we even if we want to go past the game industry, right? It's going to get to a point. It's going to be very difficult to not use this. I think it's going to be one of those things that become part of our daily life, right? And it's more around. Let me, in a way, try and liken it to this era of moving to smartphones, right? So older versions of phones, right, not having access to complex operating systems to perform these functions. I just think it's going to be in a situation whereby you just don't. Yes, I mean, I wouldn't say premium, but exclusive, right? It's more around. I feel it's going to get to a point where these paywalls behind AI become redundant, right? Of course, for just like basic use, general use, There will definitely be some quite advanced use that are going to be put behind paywalls, but for like ordinary use, right? It's definitely going to be accessible. I think the more AI develops, the more accessible it becomes to people. And if you are not using it, yes, you're definitely going to be missing out on quite some basic things that may I mean in the next 10 years, some things that will become so basic that I mean these things you're not expecting that human um, brain power to be processing, right? So yeah, it's that's I think that's how I see it. I see Wesley has his hand up, probably to add some stuff. So yeah.
Yes, actually. There's a very interesting question that I'd like to respond that Dorothy asked Kennedy about where I see AI coming in, where we see the industry going in the next 2036. One of the interesting things that I did see what I do foresee happening is sort of a catch-22 scenario where in the next coming years, and this also touches on Yuri's point about there's going to be a lot of junior developers who worked at big AAA companies and are now, laid off and now free to work, we'll see a massive influx of games. And I don't want to say most of them, but there's going to be an influx of games that will be AI slop, right? Or about a bunch of content that will be AI slop. We're seeing it happen even as early as now. But what I believe will happen is that will raise the quality bar for a lot of uh, gamers or a bunch of people who are playing games to a level of where yes you're using AI, yes you're using the generative AI or whatever to make the game you're making, but we have a standard quality of what you expect. One of the things that I do base this example of is you can remember the best game in 2010. What was the top tier game in 2010? What you think the best game is? Now, if you compare that game in 2010 to what you'd expect the best game is in coming out in 2026, the quality bar has massively increased, and AI is a big proponent of that quality bar increasing. So what I do believe seeing happening, and Christoph even touched on it when he was talking about um, the barrier of entry for AI, is that there'll be a bunch of AI tools free on the market for people to use, which they would definitely utilize to make a bunch of games, most of them coming out as AI slop. But then what will happen is the community will have now a massive negative reaction to it and increase its quality bar very significantly and say, your game must come to these specific standards to be considered a game, not just worth awards, but even worth playing. So what I foresee happening is the standard of games massively increasing, and not just in 2026, and probably in the next 5 years. I dare say in this year alone, we've just started and we've seen one of the games coming out called Crimson Desert has made massive leaps on what it means to be an RPG, and a bunch of those tools have underlying AI tools that people don't realize is actually AI tools. So we see a massive leap in quality, but also a bunch of games that are happening. And then the unfortunate truth that will come from there is that as an indie developer or as a singular studio, you will now have to think, and I dare say, more creatively and more ingenuitively on how you make your game appear on a player's screen, because there's going to be a mass of games you're competing with. Bunch of them will just be labeled AI slop. There was a time we interviewed Kennedy where Hero was called an AI game, and that's an example of the amount of quality that players expect him when they see a game. Because from that perspective, it's this is the quality you expect when you call your product a game. So that's just touch a bit on what Christopher, Yuri, and Kennedy had said, and answering some of the questions that Dorothy had asked on where we see the future of AI in games.
All right, thank you for that. Okay, I can see Quadro has his hand up, but so David had his hand up first, then Kennedy, then Quadro. So we will just take final thoughts as short as possible in the order of the hand raises. So David first, then Kennedy, then Quadro. Yeah, and then we can close for the day. But David, you first.
Yeah, so yeah, my final thought. First thing is, first of all, we need to understand what game is, you know, in itself, right? It has to be fun and it has to be entertaining. Whether it educates, that's an addition, right? So in the end, whether you use AI or not to make your game, it has to be fun. And I think that's something that players are concerned about with a lot of AI slubs that we see. It takes away the fun aspect of it and it makes it feel generic. And you can already start to think, oh, this is AI. Even games that were not made with AI that when that felt that way were called out. So players will not play, a game that is not fun. That's one. And I think looking forward into the future, one thing I see is more regulation, right? um Innovation precedes regulation, right? Regulation will always try to catch up with innovation, and AI is moving at a very fast rate. And I see a lot of legalities coming in over the years to kind of not stifle the innovation, but actually to control. And that way, we'll see less of intellectual property theft, because this is something that we are seeing a lot of, with the advent of AI. Someone can take up someone's work, you know, dump the data into AI and create something else, right? In the end, you did not acknowledge the original creator. And I think that's where a lot of artist concerns are, right? Where anyone from any part of the world can just take my work and use it, and now, they can now own it without me getting the credit for that work. So I think more, regulations will come in to actually define, who owns what and what can people really use. But on a high level, I think if you make a fun game, right, a game that is fun, even if you use AI, I mean, there was an example of Crimson Desert. I mean, this game that won Game of the Year last year, Clear Obscure, AI was used, right? People, I mean, this game sold a lot of copies. So in the end, players want to play something fun and doesn't feel bland and generic. And if you can give the players that, they don't care whether you use AI or not, right? They would definitely love it.
All right, thank you very much. Kennedy, final
And
thoughts?
yep, I just wanted to add on Wesley's thoughts. If AI gets better, we will definitely see more slope. But the truth is that slope has always existed. Like right now, on any marketplace, you'll find several thousands copies of Temple Run or GTA, and that could be called slope. So I think slope has always been there, and one thing I've noticed, we are all from Africa here, and we know that in Africa we have like a huge market of second-hand clothes, but still fashion designers get to make clothes and they sell them at insanely high prices. So I feel like when slope increases, that increases the value of handcrafted work. So that means people like us will be fine, even if there is too much slope, because that will increase the value of the games that we put out. Um, yeah, that's that. It was insane for people to say that our game is AI slope. Up to today, I don't know what that was about, but it is what it is. Yeah.
You can continue, Kennedy.
Okay, I think I'm muted. Oh no, no, no. I think Kennedy's done. So Quadwo had his hand up too. So Quadwo, final thoughts if you want to share.
Okay. Yeah, so for me, I think there are going to be two types of studios. Uh, there's studios that are more centered on AI, and the others that will be more of the handcrafted stuff, even though there's going to be an inclusion of AI stuff, but that will be much more of the premium side. The more AI tools or stuff that the other studios uses, everyone is using it, so the value of it will definitely go down. But studios that prefer using the human creativity to do a lot of stuff will have that premium um, list or build for their end. For example, even in the car industry, cars like Bugatti and all of those stuff, they are considered premium cars and they are very, very expensive just because it's handcrafted. So definitely studios that are more geared into the human creativity side will definitely be geared to be paying more or to earn more than others that uses more generic AI tools. Yeah.
All right. Thank you. I think we have officially and finally come to the end of this meetup for the month. I mean, it has been a very insightful conversation. We've been listening to what sounds like either a very excited future or a very, very dystopian one. We're still yet to find out. Hopefully, it turns out to be great for us, and AI turns out to be a bit of a net positive for the industry. Thank you to everyone who joined, everyone who shared insights. So, Yuri, Wesley, David, Christopher, Quadwo, and Kennedy, thank you so much for taking the time to join us this evening to share your insights, to share your knowledge. I mean, I know that there's probably 500 other things you guys would have wanted to do with your time. And we really appreciate the sacrifice, really. Thank you so much. And I do wish, we could continue this conversation. Hopefully we get the opportunity and the chance to continue this conversation, especially as AI advances. For the people who are listening, who are joining in, I mean, for us, the key takeaways is that AI is basically coming for all of our jobs, eventually at some point, but not all of our jobs, most of our jobs. So, we better learn to work with AI as opposed to against AI. Of course, we've talked about how AI has improved speed, has improved scale. Of course, the problems we have with translating AI from something created by the Western audience into something that we as Africans have to use, and the pitfalls of trying to tell African stories with AI. There's also, of course, the economics around AI and the questionable ethics that we are still figuring out at this point surrounding AI. And I think at the end of the day, the truth is that AI will not define African game development. I mean, it will be a huge part of African game development, but the people who are making African games are the ones that are going to define what African game development looks like. We're the ones who are going to make the decisions. We're the ones who are going to create the tools that we're going to need. And, whether AI is a huge part of that or not is a decision that we will make with all of the information that we currently have. And I think if we are going to rewrite the playbook of game making, game development on the African continent, we need to do it a bit more deliberately. And of course, we're looking forward to what the future holds. So thank you so much for taking the time out once again. And we really appreciate your time and effort. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks, Abby, and thank you to all our speakers. This has been quite insightful. It's a conversation that needs to be had over and over again, right? Because it keeps advancing, and it's something that we're still going to be conversing about continuously as that change continues to go. I think my biggest takeaway is that there's a massive opportunity in AI in that everybody is now enabled. Like the tool is there, it's available for use. It just needs it just needs everybody to know how to use them. And how I see it is how you can write code to develop a game, right? But there are very specific ways that you can write good code and build a good architecture for code or build optimized code for a game. So everybody can use AI, but how you're using it and how you're choosing to use it to build your game will determine if you get to have that competitive edge. If your players are going to love your game, if I think it was Yuri who brought up this conversation on what the players want versus what studios want, right? So studios want to be able to make games efficiently. Players want more original, fun games, right? So how do you create that balance, and how do you use AI efficiently to be able to still achieve a good player experience for your players? So thank you all so much for attending, and to all our attendees today. It's been amazing getting to have this conversation, and please let us know what other conversations you'd like us to have, what other speakers you'd like us to bring in, so that we can continue to grow the ecosystem. And before we close, we deliberately did this differently this year from what we've been doing in our previous meetups, where we do a technical presentation and we're all listening in and we have a Q&A. So this conversation felt different, less of a presentation and more like bringing creatives in a room to think out loud and share their thoughts. And we're considering doing more of this one-on-one sittings with these creatives on the continent, getting to unpack their journeys, hard decisions, failures, and philosophies in a conversational format as opposed to the presentations. And we can do a deep dive to understand the journeys of the different creatives on the continent and how they're able to make it in this industry, right? So if this is something you think that will be interesting, that you want to be listening to on the go, let us know in the comments with a thumbs up. If no, thumbs down, right? And we'll be doing this every third Wednesday of the month. So we'll be seeing you next in March with a different conversation on the games industry and bringing different experts to also share their knowledge with you. With that said, we've come to the end of our session today. So thank you, everyone. Thank you so much to our speakers again, and enjoy the rest of your evening. Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.